Oh, there it is. Okay, cool.
Hello, Dr. Megan. Thank you so much for joining us today. Seriously, I'm so pumped for this interview.
I am too. Thank you so much for having me on, Lisa.
Okay, so the first thing that I love to just ask people is, especially right now, at the time we're recording this, we're in kind of a season of transition with, New Year's and Christmas and all the holiday chaos. But what does your morning routine look like? What are your mornings like that kind of set you up for success?
Oh goodness. Okay. So we're in like a little bit of flux right now, but that's actually one thing that I'm really trying to be very intentional on is keeping my morning routine. So I've pivoted in the last year. It used to be wake up and immediately go work out. More recently, my workout gets pushed to later, like right after my morning routine, mostly so that I actually can be intentional about slowing down because I figured I just kind of kept that energy going throughout my day and was too like almost too high energy. So my mornings, I'm really intentional about. I get up. The first thing I do is bright sunlight. If I'm generally up before the sun, so when I say sunlight, I generally mean like my bright kitchen lights. Bright sunlight is way better, but make do with what you can. And then I sit and it kind of depends. A lot of times it's journaling. Sometimes it's like stream of consciousness, some kind of whether a journal prompt or stream of consciousness journaling, some kind of like writing and just getting my thoughts out on paper in some way, shape, or form. And then I do have a dog, so the dog will go on a walk, and I'll try to do like a walking meditation. If any of you have like tried to do that while walking your dog, you know that's a little hairy,
Yeah,
but
I
I,
got
I
two.
make it work.
It's a dream.
Yep. And then I come in. I don't actually have any. If I have coffee, I don't have it for the first like hour and a half to 2 hours. I wait. We don't have to dive way into the science, but there is really good science on that boosting your energy throughout the day to not have it immediately. Um, and then
But I don't
some kind of movement practice. Sorry, go
That's
for it.
awesome.
What?
So great. Yeah, I have heard that, like for optimum performance to have coffee at around 10 usually for most people is kind of the ideal moment, but I don't understand why. I don't understand like the science behind it. I also haven't looked anything up, but you know.
It's really in line with, so it's just allowing your body to create the natural energy hormones that you have. Like, I don't need to go way into the science of it, but like your cortisol, your dopamine, like it wants your body to be able to naturally create things rather than the caffeine like playing that role and kind of like taking over. So if you get your body's natural ability to create those things, and then by all means supplement it. There is a caveat. If you are the person that still works out first thing in the morning, um, then that kind of changes things a little bit to kind of get that spike right before you go work out.
That's awesome. Okay, and what does movement look like for you? I know you're like a badass lifting crazy woman.
So movement looks like a lot of different things. I do weightlift, I do CrossFit, and then I used to compete in Olympic weightlifting. I'm not actively competing right now, but I'm
Oh, no
probably
big
going to
deal.
jump into a competition at some point next year. Just because
Amazing.
it's fun. I like competing. And then I'm actually very intentional. Outside of seasons when I have like a competitive goal, like when I was competing in trail running, competing in Olympic lifting, my movement looked a little bit more stringent. But outside of those times, like now, I'm really enjoying, like, I'm going snowboarding on Monday and then taking a dance class with some friends. Tuesday will be CrossFit, maybe some lifting. Wednesday, I might go do, I don't know, like literally anything. Just whatever brings me joy, mixed in with at least 2 to 3 days of like some really intentional strength training. And then if I don't have anything that really comes to mind or is planned, then I jump into a CrossFit class.
I love
Yeah,
that.
every morning I do something that just brings me joy for about 10 minutes. Normally it's dancing around the kitchen while I make breakfast.
I love that. Well, because also I feel like so often we perceive any kind of movement as almost a way of punishing ourselves, or even as something
Hmm.
that needs to be super rigid, like part of a program and stuff. And I love the way that you're like, it sounds like you're just enjoying your body and enjoying your ability to do all of these amazing things. more so than being
Yeah,
as rigorous with the program. And I think that they both have a beautiful place. It's kind of cool.
they do. Yeah. I work with a lot of my membership clients on creating a little bit more structure because some people need it if they don't have a habit of movement yet. Like
Yeah.
there's definitely a time and place for that, but there's something to be said for like, I feel like all too often, like you said, it turns into a punishment, whether it's a punishment for what we ate or a punishment for like body image issues, or there's all kinds of things, or maybe it's a coping mechanism for something else that you're not addressing in your life. Like those fine, like motivators, whatever, but it's not a healthy way to go about it. And I feel like there's something really beautiful about incorporating joy into your movement practice, whatever it looks like. And then, I mean, I get asked all the time as a physical therapist, as a CrossFit coach, as an educator, I'm constantly asked like, hey, like what should I be doing? I'm like, whatever you want to do. Like what's the thing that you actually enjoy doing? Because that's the one that you're gonna stick to. And if you don't stick to it, it doesn't work.
Oh, I love that. I love that because then it also helps people to kind of have the like have their own intuition and be able to be like, oh, I'm drawn to this. And you're so right. You're so right. I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
There's the caveat of you're not always gonna want to do it. There's times I'm like dragging myself to the gym. I always end up enjoying it. Like I never regret it.
Yeah. You
But
always
there
feel
are going
so
to be
good
times, and
after.
that's exactly, yeah. And that's where it creates a habit. Like the number of times I'm like, okay, just put the shoes on. Okay, well, now you might as well get in the car. All right, well, now you might as well drive there. Like I
Uh-huh.
do play that
Oh,
game with
now I'm in
myself
the
on a
door.
regular
There's
basis.
times where, yeah, it's like, okay, I got
Yeah.
in the door. Now I need to make this worthwhile. And then I end up loving it and
Yeah.
leaving so much better. But it's funny. That
Exactly.
those little oh, what do they call them? Like little triggers that kind of get you into the habit.
Yep.
I love that. Eat that up. Okay, but I feel like that kind of leads into you have a new journal that just came out on Amazon, which is awesome.
Yes.
It's all about like this. It's all about creating a life based on your own like self and not others' expectations. And so I would love to talk about that a little bit more. And so first off,
Yeah.
how do you know if you're even creating a life based on other people's expectations? Because sometimes that's so ingrained in us that how do you take a step back to realize that this is something that you do need to address?
Ooh, I love this question. And the hard answer is you might not know. I think, like you said, conditioning can be so ingrained. I mean, there's a lot of no one escapes childhood without creating some kind of story about yourself. And then societal expectations, I mean, are just rampant. I think nowadays, I think in the last year or two on social media, some social conditioning has been a little bit more like brought to light than it has been in the past. But I think if you're the person that's listening to this and you kind of felt like a gut punch a little bit when Lisa just asked that question, then yeah, you probably do need to step back and start thinking about like, okay, where is what I'm doing not really aligned with what I truly feel deep down I'm meant to do? Because there really is, there's this juxtaposition. I think a lot of us, based on a lot of conversations I've had and a lot of like market research I've done for a course that I'm about to launch and for this journal, I have found that especially for females, it seems to be around age 30 that we kind of have this like, wait, what? Wait a minute kind of moment. Whether it's a major life event that happened or something, but something starts to make us wonder and we start to listen to the whispers of like, hey, you're meant for more, or there's something else you're supposed to be doing, or there's someone else who's meant for you. Like
Mhm.
this could be talking about anything, career, relationship, self-love, you name it. Um, and I think the biggest thing is starting to get quiet enough to actually listen. I think, especially as females, where a lot of our conditioning is to go, go, go and do, do, do. And it's once we start to actually slow down. I don't recommend finding out the way that I did,
How
which
did you find
was
out?
be on the go, go. My dad had all of a sudden out of nowhere had a terminal lung cancer diagnosis with 3 to 6 months to live.
Oh my God.
And so I immediately left my job and went back home and was his caregiver while I waited for my licensure to kick in there so I could work part-time. So I was his caregiver. If anyone's been a caregiver, you know, you kind of end up being the verbal punching bag. And so it ended up leaving me after his death with PTSD.
Oh no.
And so it just slammed me to the point where, I mean, I could still function at a very high rate compared to people around me. But compared to me, I mean, I couldn't go past like my 60%. So I was basically forced to slow down and get really quiet and really evaluate my life. And something like that really exposes, like, you figure out your priorities really fast.
Yeah.
And that was in, so he got sick in 2017, died then. And then PTSD was like, I mean, I was in therapy and doing all kinds of stuff 2018. And so it's been a process since then, but that was really the trigger of like it was the eye-opening moment of like, why am I so unhappy? Why am I all of a sudden like, why are my priorities shifting? And I realized, no, they were always there. I just wasn't listening to them because of my conditioning. I was supposed to get the higher level degree. I was supposed to like be the people pleaser. I was supposed to say yes to things. I like all these things. I mean, there's so many like rabbit holes that I could go down with this, but I think it could be that a lot of times, hopefully it's something more subtle that triggers us. Um, and I find a lot of times you might be living a life adjacent to the one you're meant for. Like there are going to be aspects, unless you were really like, if you're a hardcore people pleaser, you might have said, gone really on a different path, you might need to full pivot. But a
Yeah.
lot of people like me, I was like somewhat of a people pleaser. It was expected, but I was also enough of a rebel. Like I'm the kind of person that follows the rules just enough, but I'm also going to do what I want to do. Um, and
It's a good healthy balance.
so, yeah, it's a healthy balance. And that ended up with me finding ways that like fit with what my parents and what society expected me to do, but still was enough in line with what I was meant to do. So does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
I'm kind of like adjacent to, but there's all kinds of things that I have figured out since 2018 that I'm like, huh, all right, yeah, that's been there all along. It was just kind of like hidden and buried because I was not acknowledging it. I was ignoring the whispers.
Yeah. Somewhere I've heard that, if you don't listen to the whispers, then they turn into a pebble and they turn
Oh,
into.
they turned into a 2x4.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it becomes quite loud. But oh
Yes.
man. Well, really, thank you
Yeah.
so
And I think the
much.
biggest thing with figuring out, it really like there's a direct correlation with personal development and how much you recognize that you are living a life for you versus expectations. Like there really is.
I believe that so fully. Yes, yes. So, what are some practices that you recommend?
Yeah. So that's actually why I created the journal. The journal is everything that I used as far as practices, exercises, rethinking things. Like it's all of that in one thing.
Yeah,
So
this is not
there
like
are
just
a couple
a
things.
little average film, this is deep work, really impactful. This is everything that you've learned in all of your expertise and all of your own personal story and like this is a meaty
Yes.
big, yeah.
Yes. It's definitely not, because it almost might be better called workbook, just because I do have freebies that are in it that are linked to like daily, weekly calendars, habit trackers, that kind of stuff. But the idea is like, no, if we're doing personal development, like there's going to be days where you can dive in, and there's going to be like days, weeks, maybe even months that you need to step back and kind of either recalibrate or integrate or something else. So it's designed to be like a choose your own adventure and do it at your own pace, like whatever feels
Oh,
right for
I love
you.
that.
So yeah.
Because then you don't have the
Um,
guilt of like, oh, I need to take a second. I need to process this or let
exactly. And that's where
her
people
say.
get off track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you have that
Yeah.
built.
The shame and guilt that comes with not staying on some kind of like structured path is where I think a lot of people fall off on that kind of stuff. So as far as practices, they're in the journal, but there's two that I really like. If I were to pick like two, like, hey, to start thinking about, one is called the perfect day exercise. And I remember the first time I heard this, I was like, wait, do you mean work day or like weekend? And the person talking to me that was kind of like going through it was like, they should be one and the same. If you have a perfect day, you should be in your purpose doing something that brings in income, and you should be doing all the other stuff. Like, we shouldn't have to separate it. I was like, okay, cool. And so it's right out detailed, including like what you're doing, how you're feeling. Are there things that you're smelling? Are there things that you're seeing? Like, who are you with? What do you want to experience? Like, all of that. What does your perfect day look like? And then from then on out, like, I think I did that in 2019. And it's changed a little bit. Like, every year I actually revisit that and do the exercise again and then see if it still matches up or where I need to kind of pivot. But if it doesn't fit that, if whatever opportunity or thing is coming my way or whatever choice I'm trying to make doesn't get me towards that, it's a no.
Oh, so it's an excellent kind of North Star to give you so much clarity for your whole year. I love that.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, what would you say to somebody that is just exhausted and is like, okay, but my perfect day is just to lay on a beach and have Mai Tais all day? Like, what?
That's going to be your perfect next week, maybe, but it's not your perfect day.
Yes.
And I think, and that's where, because I totally get that 100%. And there are times where I feel like if you get away from what your perfect day is, what, because that really is, it should be a very concise, like, this is what life is supposed to be for me if I was going to be living my best life. If you get too far away from that, I think, especially if you're in that season where you really are living for the expectations of others, like, yeah, you're going to get burnt out and you're going to need a week in Bali doing nothing but sipping Mai Tais, 100%. And then you can work towards your perfect day. But you'll know what it is, even if you need to take some time off.
Oh, I love that. That's a great answer. All right, my next question is, what if people don't like your changes? Especially if you have been a people pleaser, often that can be really difficult to set boundaries and how, like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So, first off, people are going to not like, you're going to have at least a few people who don't like your changes. And this is probably the hardest part. I mean, there's a lot of hard things about growing and becoming the person you are versus the person you're meant to be versus the person you have been. But being okay with leaving people behind is probably one of the harder ones because it hurts. It really does. There's no getting around that.
There is a mourning process.
But yes, that is huge. I think grief is getting talked about more and more these days, but what still isn't really talked about, like, we talk about grief as far as the loss of a loved one. What we don't talk about is the grief of a loss of a friendship and the grief of who you were prior to this moment.
Yes. Yes, because that can be huge.
Yes. I mean, it's been instrumental. And you have to allow yourself that grieving process, or it's going to be really hard to move on in any of those. I would actually say probably grieving like who I thought I was going to be prior to like making these realizations is just as big as some pretty major friendships that, you know what, those were supposed to be in my life for a period of time, but they were not meant to stay with me and I had to let them go. Um, Admittedly, sometimes I fought it and tried to stay in. And that's where, again, that whole like whisper to pebble to two by four happens. Um, and especially if you've been a people pleaser, it will probably take a few of those for you to finally be like, all right, I'm done. Like, if you're not working for me, you're out. But it does. There's a long process of getting there. So if you're one of those people, just kind of be patient with yourself, give yourself grace. It's okay. Um, Boundaries are going to be imperative. And I would say to have the uncomfortable conversations. If someone's fighting back against changes that you're going through and the person that you're becoming, I'm kind of the person that's like, I don't immediately write them off, but I'll have that uncomfortable, really hard conversation of like, hey, here's where I'm going. I would love for you to be with me. But if you're not okay with that, or if you're going to continue to fight me, like, I'm sorry, you're not going to be there. Obviously, that conversation looks very different depending on the exact circumstances, but that's the gist of it. That's the message that's underlying every single one of them. And that conversation will bring a lot of light to if that person really is someone that you're just going to have to walk away from, or if they are someone that maybe it's just going to be a step or two behind you, but they're willing to come along for the ride, or they're going to jump 2 feet forward or 2 feet into the fire with you. I have seen a few people like that was their catalyst for their change in a really, really positive, beautiful way.
Oh, that's a big deal. And that's also some really great insight and motivation for people that might be afraid to have those hard conversations, to know that results like that have happened and that is possible, but it only comes
Yeah.
with open communication.
Yep, communication's imperative. There's have you read Untamed by Glennon Doyle?
Oh, twice. So good.
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes from her is there's no such thing as one-sided liberation from that book. And it really is. Like if you have that uncomfortable conversation, you decide to leave that person behind, like it's going to be the best thing for both of you. It's okay. And
Yeah.
that's given me a lot of peace to know that it's not only the best thing for me, but it's also ultimately going to be the best thing for them, even if it's hard in the moment.
Yes. Yes. Ooh. Ooh, so good. So good. Okay. All right. Next question. Um, oh my gosh, I love this. Can you speak to how mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness are all intertwined to reach your goals?
So they're intertwined with literally everything. And I'll even add like physical to that. So emotional and mental health and spiritual, we kind of take any of those realms. If we're thinking about like, so imagine like a line up on a chart being like your threshold of capacity. And this could be, there's going to be a chart for physical, a chart for emotional, a chart for mental. The thing is though, that anything that's going on in any of the others, so it's like, say this is the physical chart. If something's going on in emotional, you're already bumped up towards that capacity from the get-go. And then because your system's already working so hard on one realm, that then it has less capacity in all of the other realms. So if you aren't addressing something in one, it will eventually start to slowly creep up and affect all of the others so much that then you'll end up having issues in those.
Oh, okay. I've never heard it explained that way, but that makes so much sense. And you see that. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that
Yep.
because it does
And
like,
it's,
yeah.
yeah, it's a double edge. Like, and it really is. It goes from both directions. So as far as like goals, so if my goal is that I want to have this perfect day and be running a successful like entrepreneur business and be healthy and like honestly kind of a goal that a lot of us have is like we want to be successful in our career, have good relationships and be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's a very basic. So if we have something that we're not addressing it emotionally, it's going to affect our gym performance. It's going to affect how our gut health is. And it's going to affect how much we can focus throughout the day. So all those goals are going to be a little bit thrown off and it may not be apparent at first, but it'll build and build. And that's just one example, but it can happen with any of those realms.
Yes. Oh, I see that. Yeah. Well, and even, if your energy levels are low, if you're having a hard time, like, you're not as healthy as you can be, then you're not as focused, you're not thinking as clearly, and you're not as motivated with your work and
Exactly.
show up as present because you're more scatterbrained with the people that you care about. And that I see that in so
Exactly.
many ways. Oh,
Oh,
good
yeah.
stuff.
And
Are
I will
there,
say too, if anyone is actually dealing with an injury, that will also take longer if you're not addressing emotional and mental health. And pain can actually be because of an emotional issue.
whoa, wait, what? This is good
Yeah.
stuff.
So I've seen this I'll give an example from my second year of practice because it's the most quintessential, like severe case that I had seen of this. And there was a woman who came to see me. She had been to 10 other practitioners, had unrelenting chronic back pain. She was saying it was like a 12 out of 10. I could barely touch her without her jumping off the table screaming. Like it was like gnarly low back pain. I did every test in the book. She had had imaging that was clear, which she didn't even need imaging. That's a topic for an entire other thing. Like we do not need imaging nearly as much as the medical system says we do. Um, Everything hurt, but I couldn't find any biomechanical reason for her pain. None. So I finally got fed up because this was prior to me like really diving into this stuff. But this was kind of the catalyst for me looking into it. And so I just put her on a hot pack because she said that that helped her feel good. And I just let her talk. And she ended up dumping on me about her son-in-law, something or other. Like I can't, for HIPAA reasons, I can't dive way into it,
Of
but she
course.
just unloaded on me for about 40 minutes. And she sat up afterwards and said, I was like, all right, how's your pain? She said, it's a 6 out of 10 for the first time in years.
Wow. She was just
And we
holding
did that.
on.
Yep. She was just holding on. It was presenting as very chronic, debilitating low back pain. This is a person who couldn't get out of bed, couldn't sleep, couldn't bend over. And like I said, this is the most severe case, but I've seen it plenty of times where someone comes in and they have a shoulder injury and they're stressed about work and they're not eating enough. And so instead of their pain being a 4 out of 10, it's spiked to 7 out of 10, and they can't move as well until we address the other things. And then all of a sudden it comes back down and we can also work on the mechanical stuff.
Yeah.
So that's like a quick synopsis of it. But yeah, I see it all the time.
That's awesome. Well, even, obviously at a significantly lesser degree, I know when I'm stressed, I feel like my neck is so sore and like you carry it like that's
Mhm.
awesome. Yeah. I love
Yep. Neck tension, jaw tension, pelvic floor tension actually is big with emotional stuff too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. All right. For our listeners, are there any quick actionable tips that you'd like to share in any of those areas?
So the biggest one, I mean, if you guys haven't figured it out, I'm huge on movement. I think it's imperative. And so find a movement practice that works for you and stick to it. Don't allow yourself to make excuses and get out of it. And it doesn't, when I say that, it does not have to be like we talked about. It does not have to be, I'm going to the gym for an hour, like 5 days a week. No, give me like, I do think it's important to do actual strength training. Like when I say strength training, I don't mean 5 pound weights. I mean like go lift a barbell.
Yes.
Like 2 days a week. If you have 2 days a week of that, and then you really want to dance or do rock climbing or something else like those other days, and give yourself a rest day and give yourself like at least one active recovery, which just means like go on a walk kind of day, but have them use movement practice and stick to it. It will just make everything else so much better. The early sunlight that we talked about. And then the other ones that I think are huge is find some sort of like breathing practice that works for you. You're going to have those moments throughout the day where you get stressed or you're low energy or something happens, like life gets in the way. There's box breathing, there's 4-7-8 breathing, there's all kinds of things, but find something that works for you. A lot of times for me, especially if I'm stressed, I just count 10 slow breaths. I don't like worry about counting how much I'm inhaling or how much I'm holding, but it's just, let's close my eyes and take some breaths. The other one, because I do work in patient care, and then I'm actually developing a course designed to support healthcare workers in burnout. And so this is something that I'm going to talk about with them too, especially if you work with people or you have kids that you're around. Take a second to shake it out. It can be go hide in the bathroom for 2 seconds and just do a full body shake, but it actually does kind of recalibrate your nervous system and you will feel immediately better. As weird as that sounds, it really works.
I love it. Yes. I have 4 kids and I could testify that absolutely works. Don't zebras do that also? After
yes, they do.
Get away, they do a little shake.
Yeah,
matters.
that goes way into somatics, but all animals, humans are like the only ones that don't do that after some sort of like traumatic experience.
We just hold it and then we walk around in pain and
Yep.
anxious.
Yep. All other animals take a second and shake it out.
Wow. Okay, these are like really good actionable tips. I love that. All right, how do we stay in touch with you? How do we buy your book? How do we get to know you better? What are your handles and all that good stuff?
Yeah, so pretty much everything is Move on the Daily. Daily is my last name, so it's spelled Daley. I am admittedly the most active on Instagram. So shoot me a DM. I'm very responsive. I would love to hear from everyone. And then the journal is on Amazon, so I can send you the link so you can include it. But it is in my Instagram bio as well. And then I also have, I think your readers or listeners would love the free energy tool that I just launched a couple weeks ago. So it's like one tool that's going to help increase energy throughout the day. And it's a lot of like little things that we've talked about, but then I add on to that.
Beautiful. Oh, that's awesome. And thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Okay, I have loved this so much. I've loved getting to know you better. I feel like you have so much awesome wisdom and insight and expertise. And yeah, this has been so fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This has been great.